Hello, and welcome to Mildly Interesting History. Today, we'll be looking at 3 mildly interesting facts about the First World War, which was fought from 1914 to 1918. Number 1, some literal knights in armor tried to join the war. In September 1914, Russia declared war on Turkey, thus becoming part of the First World War. During the following months, men, desperate for a taste of battle, volunteered to join the armed forces in droves. These were normal, modern men. But in April 1915, a band of men in knights' armor, carrying shields and broadswords came riding on horseback down the main avenue of their hometown. Entering the governor's palace, they then supposedly asked "Where's the war?" telling him that they hear there's a war. These men were known as the Kefsirs, and were descended from crusaders who left France 800 years before. Becoming detached from the main army and marching through Turkey and Armenia to settle in Georgia, which was eventually annexed by Russia in 1801. These men in particular had chosen to carry on the traditions of their ancestors, continuing to wear the armor and carry the swords and shields, generation after generation. It is unknown, unfortunately, if they ended up fighting on the battlefields, as the records that describe the Kefsirs' story are incomplete. But these may well have been the last crusaders in history. Number 2, Franz Ferdinand's license plate predicted the end of the war. Archduke Franz Ferdinand was the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, and his assassination was the trigger that set off the First World War in the first place. But a rather curious coincidence occurred involving his license plate. Ferdinand spent the days leading up to his assassination driving around Sarajevo, greeting ministers and other people of importance in the local area. Bizarrely, the car in which he was driven had the number plate A111118, which supposedly spells out Armistice, November 11, 1918, the day that the armistice was signed, officially ending the First World War. Whilst this is most likely simply a coincidence, this could be the result of a meddling time traveler's prank. Number 3, bikes were used during World War I. Invented in 1817 in France, bicycles were lighter, quieter and logistically easier to manage than horses, making them ideal for reconnaissance and communications work. First being used in this way during the Second Boer War in 1899. A reform 9 years later in 1908 reorganized the volunteers, and as a result, 9 initial cyclist battalions were formed. After this initial formation, various units were added, and on the eve of the First World War, the territorial force had the strength of 14 cyclist battalions. The Army Cyclist Corps was founded in 1915 in order to cover these battalions, and was mainly used for reconnaissance, as they were found to be ineffective in trench warfare, which was the main military strategy used throughout the First World War, especially on the Western Front. Following the war, cyclists were perceived as having little future value, and the Corps was disbanded in 1919 with all remaining territorial battalions converted back to conventional infantry by 1922. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed, make sure to subscribe so that you do not miss my future videos.